Hello, hello, and happy marvelous Monday, everybody. I hope that you are well. How are you? Thank you so much for tuning in today, guys. And listen, it is the 6th month of the year. Can you believe it? We are already in June. Like this year has gone by so amazingly fast. And I just want to say to all of you who are celebrating your birthdays in June, all of you June celebrants, happy birthday to you. This is an exciting time. I don't know where you are tuned in, your geographical location, but we have been hit hard with cicadas and hot weather. So I don't like either of the two. But in any event, I didn't create the weather. I didn't create the cicadas as much as I hate them. Like those bugs are everywhere. Has anybody experienced cicadas? I know that some people say, well, Karissa, we don't really have cicadas in my neighborhood. Listen, I was out today. True story. I was out today and I was visiting a family member. And as I was walking up the steps, I was attacked. Like the cicadas just came out from nowhere. And I felt like it was an attack. But anyway, I don't like bugs, needless to say. And a lot of people are really complaining about cicadas. Tenants and residents, they're complaining about the bugs. Owners and landlords and neighbors, family, friends, and loved ones, they're complaining about the bugs. I absolutely hate the bugs. But anyway, that's just my little rant about the bugs. Anyway, we're here today, and I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. I am Karissa Span, the landlord and tenant coach, and I am excited that you are here today. Today is part 2 as we are discussing we're talking about intentional tenant damage today, right? And so we're going to continue with the discussion. And a lot of you who have been tuned in, you've been watching me or following me for a while, you already know that I'm passionate about teaching and educating and making a difference. And so who this segment is for, this is for landlords, this is for tenants, real estate investors, anybody that's thinking about getting into property management, or anybody that is currently renting, all right? And so it's to help the rental community as a whole. Let me just give a disclaimer. The information that I share today is not legal advice, okay? But it is, however, the industry's best standards and tips on how to deal with and maintain rental property. So if you are the owner, if you have someone that is managing your property, please share this information. Sharing is caring. My only goal is to help people understand how to manage, how to maintain rental property. All right. And if you are thinking about becoming a landlord, or if you know someone who is thinking about becoming a landlord, please listen to the tips that I'm sharing today. If you are a tenant, please listen to the information that I share, because I share information for landlords, but I also share information for tenants. All right. Just a little bit about my background. I've been in the rental property industry for well over 28 years. I am also a housing educator. I teach property management. And so it is always my pleasure to share information to help anybody that I can. All right. So I just believe that together is better. All right. So, but before I get into the discussion, I want to acknowledge a few people who are here. Okay. Hello, Sissy. Thank you so much for tuning in from Brooklyn, New York. Guys, let me know where you're tuned in from. All right. We have Kimberly Parker, who is tuned in from Charleston, South Carolina. Hello, 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 beautiful ladies. Hello, Hazel. Thank you so much, beautiful, for joining me today. How are you? Okay. And you're also from Brooklyn, New York. Okay. We got Brooklyn representing strong today. All right. So as I've indicated, we are going to continue with the conversation, the discussion, and the dialogue about tenant damage. That's one of the things that I've seen so frequently in the rental property industry. And I think that if people really understood the dynamics of what's happening when they see tenant damage and knowing how to address it, I believe that that gives us the greatest opportunity and advantage to get ahead of the curve versus not addressing the behavior and the action. Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, we can't control what people do. We can't really stop people from being bad seeds. let's just be honest. Let's just be honest, right? There are going to be bad seed. So whether it's a tenant who is a bad seed or a landlord who is a bad seed, we can't stop people from being who they are. However, we can address the behavior. We can address situations when they begin to come up. So that is my goal, to help people to understand today. Me in My Life Forever is tuned in from DC. Thank you so much. All right. YouTube is in the building. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Listen, if you're watching on Facebook, please like my Facebook channel. If you are tuned in by way of YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe to that YouTube channel. That way, when I'm live and online, you will be the first to know. Okay. So today, I'm just going to share some information for you. Let me bring up my tips on the screen, and I promise I am not going to hold you long. I promise I'm not going to hold you long. However, I'm going to hold you long enough to answer any questions that you have, any comments, any remarks or observations pertaining to this subject matter. And of course, if you need additional assistance, please inbox me offline and I will try to help you out to the best of my ability. All right. So let me just bring up some information on the screen for you, because I think it's going to be helpful. And for those of you who caught the first segment, I shared information about a lease package that I use, and my lease package is at least 61 pages long. I've had quite a few of you who asked me for the lease package. And so if you would just go ahead and drop your email address either in the comment section or email me, and I will get that information to you. Okay. And so when it comes to tenant damage, if you had an opportunity to look at the description and the picture, it shows sometimes the condition of what is going on in the rental property, or just to give you an idea. And so when you see these type of behaviors, when you see these type of things going on in the rental property, the one thing that I strongly recommend is that as a housing provider or a landlord, to not ignore what you see. Okay. It is always in your best interest to address red flags. Okay. If there's an elephant in the room, go ahead and address the elephant in the room. But let me also just be clear that as housing providers and landlords, it is our job, first and foremost, to know what the law says. Okay, so that's the first thing, knowing what the laws are in that particular jurisdiction. So if the property is in Brooklyn, New York, if the property is in Charleston, South Carolina, or Washington, D.C., we must know what the laws are in that area. All right, because the only way to address problems and situations and to address or tackle the issues and to resolve them effectively, we have to know what we can and cannot do. And certainly some tenants, they know their rights. Some tenants know their rights more than landlords do and understand, because tenants have rights, but guess what? So do landlords. All right. Now, in some jurisdictions, let me just say this. In some jurisdictions, the laws are strongly in favor of the tenant, which means it's going to make it a little bit more challenging and a lot harder to, if you're trying to evict the tenant, it's going to be a lot harder. Not that you can't evict tenants, because you absolutely can, but in some places where it's pro-tenant, it just makes it a little bit more challenging to do it. And so there's an effective way to do it. All right. And so let me pause for a moment just to make sure that I get this information to you. So give me one moment. And again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you find that the information I shared today is helpful, please like and share, tag somebody so that they can also tune in. Okay. All right. And again, if you have any comments or any questions, go ahead and drop it in the comment section, and I will definitely respond to them accordingly. All right, so I'm just going to share, I'm going to do a recap of part one. So the first thing that you want to do, and I've shared this previously, but that's this. You definitely want to document the damage, right? So I've said that before. You want to document the damage. You want to document it with video footage as well as pictures, because it's not what we know, is what we can prove. And here's why that's important. When you become thorough with documenting, and you present that information to your tenants, And now tenants, don't go anywhere because I'm going to share some tips for you. This first portion is for landlords. So when you have tenants in the rental property, they're damaging the property. You want to document it with pictures. You want to document it with video footage. And you want to follow up with the tenant in writing. You want to send that tenant a letter, okay? But if you're there in person and the tenant is there with you, you definitely want to have a conversation with your tenant, okay? So I'm just going to use myself as an example. I'm also a housing inspector. So if I'm in a rental property, let's say I'm conducting an inspection, right? Or maybe I'm just there to take care of repairs because I am a hands-on housing provider. And I may not be there for all of the repairs, but I'm definitely there for inspections because as a certified housing quality standard inspector, my job and my goal is to make sure that I understand the condition of the rental property. And there's no way to understand what the property looks like on the inside unless you get in. Okay, so please don't rely on other people to tell you what's going on with the rental property. If you're responsible for managing it, if you are the owner, all right, you want to know firsthand what's going on. Now, if you own, let's say you own several rental properties and you have a property management company handling these matters for you, you still want to make sure that inspections are conducted not less than quarterly. So every 3 months or where possible, because I recognize that sometimes it's just not possible to inspect all of the rental property that frequently. I get it. This is why I coach and I help my clients understand, put inspections on a rotation schedule so that that's something that does not stop. So in the rental property, you want to identify the condition of what's going on. You want to go to every room. Now, here's the thing. Because some tenants do not welcome landlords or anybody for that matter to come into their personal space, because I've had some tenants that they sometimes feel, not all tenants, but I have had tenants who felt like people were snooping and they were being nosy, trying to see what was going on and things of that nature. Well, maybe that does happen, okay? But I promise you, me personally, I don't get anything out of taking time out of my day to go to a tenant's house or apartment or condo, right, to snoop around just to see what's going on. I promise you that I have a lot more things to do throughout my day other than to take time for that. So I always like to have a conversation. So if I'm in the rental property, all right, I'm going from room to room, identifying what the issues are or what repairs need to be made. Okay, so when you are conducting inspections, you're not just, as a landlord, you are not just looking at whether or not the tenant is clean. You're not looking at whether or not the tenant has a boyfriend or a girlfriend there. You're not looking at how much stuff they have. That's not what you're there for. When you're doing the inspection, assessing it for the condition of the rental property, you definitely want to get a clear view of the condition of the property. So here's the thing. I'm going to look at every wall in that rental property. In every room that I go in, I'm going to look around. I'm going to make sure that the walls are still intact, means that there's no hole, right? There's no writing on the wall. There's no dirt, debris. There is no waste on the wall. I've gone into rental property. Don't ask me how, but there was feces on the wall, okay? So you want to assess the condition of the property. You want to look at the floor. If it's carpet, you want to assess whether the carpet is ripped or torn. You want to make sure that there's no tripping hazards in the carpet, because if that's the situation, you want to take care of that immediately. So when you're in the rental property and you're conducting your inspection, you want to make sure that you have an inspection sheet with you, an inspection report. Worst case scenario, just get a piece of paper and just write down, okay, so I'm in the living room. As I'm in the living room, I'm looking at the walls. Okay, are the walls clean? Are there any holes in the walls? You're going to look at the windows. All right, you want to make sure that there is a screen in the window. Okay, that's going to be so important. You want to make sure that the window opens and closes properly. You want to make sure that it locks, because all of those are requirements, okay, for rental property. You want to also open and close the door. And you're doing that to make sure that, number one, the door is on the hinges, you want to make sure that it's operating properly. So, for instance, if the door doesn't close properly, then maybe an adjustment needs to be made to the frame or to the lock. You want to turn the doorknob. You want to make sure that the doorknob is still tight, not loose. The doorknob should not jiggle when you're turning the doorknob, okay? All of these things are important. You want to make sure that you check the light fixture, okay? Turn the light switch off and on. Does the light come on? If the light doesn't come on, you want to have a conversation with the tenant about maybe the light bulb. Ask the tenant, well, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, I noticed that the light switch isn't coming on. I noticed that when I flip the light switch, rather, the light doesn't come on. Do you have a light bulb? Let me pause, because in some rental properties, the owner replaces light bulbs. Well, in other rental properties, such as properties that I manage, we don't replace light bulbs unless it's a specialty type of light bulb. So if it's the tenant's requirement to have a light bulb or a battery in the smoke detector, you want to have that conversation while you are there, asking the tenant, hey, do you have a light bulb? And it would be ideal if the tenant says, well, Karissa, yeah, I do have light bulbs, but, it's very challenging for me to get up there. I don't have a ladder. I don't have anybody who can put the light bulb in, or I don't have anybody who can put the batteries in the smoke detector. What I will do is make sure that I have maintenance with me, or a contractor, or someone that can get in there to make those replacements immediately. You know why that's important? Because you don't want a tenant to complain that you're not taking care of the small repairs. So pay attention to the small details and where you can make adjustments immediately. I promise you that tenants would appreciate that a whole lot better versus promising that you're going to take care of it and it never happens. Okay, so let me now just go on. So you want to make sure that you move on to the bathroom. When you go into the bathroom, you want to flush the toilet. Now, when you flush the toilet, is the handle intact? Is it movable? Does it come off? Now, you know what? Let me back up. Before you flush the toilet, when you enter into the bathroom, do you hear the toilet running? Because if you hear water running in the toilet, that means that's a lot of money that's going down a drain, because that water bill will go up. It will increase if that toilet is running. So you want to make sure that it's not running. It's not making any noise. Okay. So when you flush when you flush the toilet and you turn the handle, you push the button. If it's a energy efficient, some of my toilets, you just push the button and it flushes. You want to make sure that it's functioning properly. But also, when you flush the toilet, take a step back. Now look at the base of the toilet. When you flush the toilet, does water come from the base of the toilet? You want to take a look at all of that, because that's going to be important. We don't want water running off, right? That would definitely be an issue. I see your comments. I'm going to come to you shortly. You want to, now here's the thing that I do. When I am in the bathroom, I will, of course, I'm going to dress in a comfortable manner. Okay. I'm not going to wear something cute. I'm not going to have my stilettos on. All right. I'm not going to be all decked out from head to toe. I'm going to have on comfortable clothes that will allow me to do the inspection while I'm there. Okay. I don't have my Gucci purse on my shoulder dangling off. I'm going to make sure that I'm prepared to do this inspection, because it's work. And sometimes doing an inspection can cause you to get dirty. Here's why I say this. So while I am in the bathroom, one of the things that I always do is I take my leg and I just gently lean up against the toilet. And I do that because I want to make sure that the toilet is stable. It's not supposed to move. It's not supposed to rock. And when I press slightly against the toilet with my leg, it should not move, right? There should be nothing as small as my body is that will cause that toilet to move. Okay. And if it does move, that means I need to get a plumber in there or someone to make sure that toilet is stable and secure to the floor. Because the one thing I don't want to see happen is you have a toilet that has been loose for so long, something happens, the tenant falls, and now the tenant wants to sue you because you didn't make the repair. So these small things, although they seem like they may not be important, and sometimes people may not care, it really is important. It really is a big deal. All right. I'm going to turn the faucet on in the bathroom. I'm going to turn the hot water on. I'm turning the cold water on. And when I am turning the faucet on, okay, in the sink, I'm making sure that when I turn the knob on, that water is not dripping. Water is not coming from the knob when I turn it on. Now, in the sink should, and in many cases, must have a stopper. So whether it's a pop-up stopper or it's a rubber stopper, you want to make sure that there's a stopper in place when you turn that water on in the sink. Now, if you turn the water on, okay, and water starts to back up in the sink, here's the thing that I know about water. It's just a flow. Nothing stops water from flowing. It should flow easily through the pipes, right? So if you turn the water on in the faucet and it begins to back up in the sink, water begins to rise, that lets you know there's something down in that drain that is stopping the flow of the water. Sometimes tenants will say, oh, well, Karissa, I don't know why my bathroom sink is stopped up. I haven't done anything. And I'll just gently educate them. I love educating my tenants. I promise y'all, I have the best tenants. Now, I'm not saying I don't have any bad ones, but I have the best tenants because I believe in educating my tenants. I believe in educating the ones that don't even want to learn. But anyway, water doesn't just back up by itself. Let's agree that something has to be down in the drain. Maybe a toy, it could be some hair. I've seen a toothbrush, a toothpaste cap. I've seen so much stuff that goes down into the drain, and sometimes tenants may not know. Maybe their child did it, or someone, a visitor or their guest came over and dropped something in the sink and didn't tell them. So sometimes tenants genuinely don't know what caused the sink to stop up. Okay, that's not the time to have an argument with the tenant to say, oh, well, you had to do something and it didn't stop up by itself. We know that's true, but of course, it's always better to treat the situation, and you can catch more bees with honey than you can with vinegar. So let's not be bitter, and let's not be sour when these issues are happening. All right, so let's say if there's a tub or in the shower, I'm going to turn that water on. Okay, I'm going to let it run. I want to make sure that when I turn the water on, whether it's the shower or the tub, that water is not dripping from the base of the tub. Okay, so if I turn the shower on, right, when the shower comes on, water should not drip out from the faucet in the tub. If that's happening, that might be an indicator that the diverter might need to be replaced. It's going bad. The shower stem is bad. Something is going on that's preventing it from operating properly. Now, let me just pause here by sharing this information. That's also going to be important because if there's excess water coming down, then that's also going to increase that water bill. And if you're responsible for paying that water bill, I promise you that's going to make a big, big difference. Okay. So you want to make sure that the plumbing is intact. You want to also look at the floor. Okay. You want to make sure that, and I've seen in some rental properties where the tenants, for whatever reason, and I don't know how, but the floor tile is lifting. It's coming up. You want to make sure that there are no tripping hazards. You want to make sure that there is nothing that's causing this tenant to trip up. No tiles cutting their feet in the bathroom. I've seen a whole bunch of stuff. And we can agree that it doesn't happen by itself, right? But when you see these type of things going on, this is when and why you should have conversations with your tenants, okay? Address it as soon as you see it. And sometimes we don't have to understand why the problem happened. Let's just address the fact that there is a problem. We have to resolve it. And if it's a repeat issue, now we have to have a conversation because obviously the tenant might not be as knowledgeable. Okay. So in the kitchen, I've shared these tips before, but I'm going to go over it in detail, a little bit more extensive than I did the last time, because I've had a lot of questions about people doing inspections and making sure they know and can identify issues when they come up. When you go into the kitchen, open the refrigerator door, the top and the bottom. You want to open the refrigerator door. You want to open the freezer door. When I open the refrigerator, and here's how I explain it to tenants while I'm in their home, because I respect my tenants, okay? I am looking at the seal or the gasket on that refrigerator door. I'm making sure that it's in place, okay? It should not move. It should not be ripped. It should not be torn. It should be intact. So when you look in the refrigerator or the freezer, if it's ripped or torn or coming away from the door, one of the things that I always do is this, because I'm always going to have my phone with me. All right. I'm always going to take pictures. So I will take a picture of the model number of that refrigerator so that I'll know what I need to order, or I'll share that information with my maintenance person or contractor, my handyman, or whoever's responsible for that job. I'm going to take a picture of the model number. I'm going to contact a company that could ship me, or that I can go and purchase the refrigerator gasket to be replaced. Okay, that's going to be so important. All right. And now, if you have a gas stove or an electric stove, you want to turn the stove on. Turn on every element on the stove. You want to turn on the oven. You want to open the oven door. If the oven is nasty and not clean, maybe have a conversation with the tenant to let the tenant know, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, I noticed that there's a lot of grease buildup in the stove, on top of the stove. It's going to be important that when the stove is not on and it's not hot, go ahead and clean it. And I'll describe to my tenants how to clean it. I tell them, use a lemon scented dish detergent, maybe Ajax. It doesn't have to be anything expensive. And I tell them that the lemon in that dish detergent, it acts as a degreaser. So it will eat up the grease. And I tell them, listen, just pour some dish detergent on top of the stove and just let it sit for a little while. That's going to make it a whole lot easier to clean it. All right. I'm going to educate my tenants, because here's what I don't want to happen. And I've seen this happen at least 3 times, where there was such a grease buildup on the stove. The tenant went to use the stove, and guess what happened? Can anybody guess what happened? I'll pause. I'll wait. So there's a lot of grease on the stove. The tenant went in to use it. They turned the stove on, and guess what happened? A fire started. A grease fire started. Absolutely. A grease fire can start easily because of grease buildup. And so when you see these type of things and you see these type of situations going on, go ahead and have those conversations, because I would much rather educate my tenant. And like I said, I do have a few tenants who don't like to be told how to clean up. Some people just don't want to be told what to do. All right. And as gentle as I am, or I like to think that I am, and being an educator, I'm one who care about my tenant. Sometimes people, they just don't want to be told that their house is dirty. I get it. But I would rather them be upset at me sharing this information versus not sharing and then something worse happen. So in one situation where the fire started on the stove because there was a grease buildup, we had to replace the stove. We had to replace the cabinets. We had to redo the entire kitchen because of tenant's negligence. Now, of course, anybody who knows me, I charged the tenant, but I had to come out of my pocket to pay for the repair of that kitchen. Okay. So a replacement of a stove could cost you $300, $400, $500, $600 on up. All right. That's just the stove. All right. We got installation. We got delivery. We had to, like I said, we had to replace cabinets. All right. Cabinets are not cheap. Okay. They had to be measured. They had to be ordered. All right. They had to be installed. We had to redo the walls in the kitchen. But before we could do any of that, we had to get a company to come in. A fire remediation company came in to make sure that we could make the repairs first and foremost. So you can see that all these costs are starting to add up quickly because the tenant didn't know. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they just didn't care. I don't know. But all I do know is that a fire started because there was a grease buildup on the stove. The tenant didn't wipe it down. And so that's why it's important that when you see these things, you address it. You try to help the tenant to understand how to maintain their home without telling them how to live in their home. There's a big, big difference. And I promise that's for another day. Let's just educate them without telling them what to do. All right. So those are just some tips, right? If you have any questions, go ahead and let me know. But when you see these type of issues, when you see tenant intentionally damaging stuff, you definitely want to identify that there is an issue that we must resolve, and we cannot allow these type of things to go on and on and on. Now, I'm happy to say that I work well with problem tenants. I think that God has gifted me and anointed me to deal with problem tenants because I seem to deal with them better than some others, and I don't have a problem with it. True story, in a community in Washington, D.C., and I won't say the apartment community name, but when I worked in that community, some of the tenants, they would come to the office and they would only deal with me. They wouldn't deal with anybody else. They didn't want to be bothered with anybody else. And I'm talking about like tenants who were strung out on drugs, right, on PCP, and would just do a number of things. Nobody in the establishment would deal with these tenants. And so the tenants, they recognize that, okay, Karissa, she got a heart for me. So let me go in, let me talk to her. I've had tenants, listen, that came to the office and say, Miss Karissa, I relapsed and I didn't go back into my drug program, or I don't have any money to feed my kids. I have actually came out of my personal pocket to go and buy tenants something to eat because I did not want to see them go through that. And the fact that they trusted me enough with that information, I respected that. And so if you have a heart for what you do, it really makes a difference, right? I love what I do, so it's not hard, right? But some people don't have the capacity, meaning that they don't have the ability to do that. They don't have the ability to deal with people they can't relate to or identify with, right? I get it. I can't relate to that behavior. I've never done drugs, but I do have a heart for helping people. And I realize that sometimes tenants, they do fall on tough times. And sometimes they just need an outlet, somebody to talk to, somebody that would talk to them, right? And so in that community, like I said, they would come to the office, they would talk to me, and a few of them, they'd be like, well, Miss Karissa is just so hard. I don't know what to do. And sometimes it was just as simple as just me putting my arms around them, just letting them know it's going to be okay. Or if it was a guy, I let them know, listen, you know, you got to tighten up because it's not going to work. And I don't want to evict you, but I got to do my job. So let me help you to help you. And if you have rental property that are in really bad communities and conditions and you're not comfortable, then please, by all means, by any means necessary, hire somebody who is comfortable enough to go into the community that will be able to communicate with these tenants, because I promise you that if a property manager or the owner's presence is consistent, sometimes that's enough to make a change. And so when I work with and I manage property in those type of communities, I always partner with law enforcement agencies and officials. I don't think that I can change the world, but I'm smart enough and I have enough wisdom to know that, okay, sometimes it takes a community to come together. And if it's a high crime area, contact the police department to say, listen, I'm the owner, I'm the property manager, whatever your position is, to say, listen, we have a problem. How can we work together to resolve the issues that we are having in this community? And I promise you that you would get more results if you do that. And I can honestly say that I have gotten the results that I do because I am not afraid to roll up my sleeve. I'm not afraid to put my boots on and go into the community, working with the tenants, working with the families, doing family community events, and just showing that, number one, that I do care. Because usually, sometimes tenants just want to know that somebody cares. If they don't see anybody, well, they just kind of do whatever they want. They have block parties, they hang out, they selling drugs, they smoking weed. That's a whole nother segment. Not for today. All right. So let me look at some of your comments, and then I'm going to go to my second point. All right. Let's see who we have here. Okay. I will definitely email you the package. Hey, Lynn. Happy Monday, beautiful. Hello, very Lady Robinson. Guys, if you are in the DC metropolitan area, please, 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 if you are in need of notary services, lady, I want you to put your information in the comment section so that I can share that with others. Please look up Ms. Robinson's information. She is a mobile notary. All right. She will come to you to notarize your documents. You want someone who's professional. You want someone that's prompt and courteous, and Ms. Robinson is definitely that. Hello, Red Carpet. Thank you so much for tuning in Fort Washington, Maryland. All right. Hello, Pippi. Thank you so much for tuning in from Brooklyn, beautiful. Okay. Lady, your question is there an amount of time? How long should it take to inspect? Great question. And thank you for that, lady. So with inspections, it just depends on how large the property is. It depends on the condition of the property, because when I do inspections, let's say I do an inspection, it's a tenant who's clean. They take pride in the home. It's clean. They don't have to move stuff out of the way. Nothing's falling to the side. They're not trying to run and sweep up real quick. So in those type of situations, an inspection might take about maybe 15 minutes, just depending on the size of the rental property. And so if it's an apartment, of course, that's going to take less time than maybe a house. But if it's a house, sometimes it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 bedrooms plus a basement. I'll go into every area of the rental property. Now, when tenants refuse to allow me in, I don't force myself. I respect that. I'll just document and note, okay, on today's date, June the 6th at whatever time it is, 8:14 p.m., tenant refuses to allow me into or allow me to enter bedroom number 1 or bedroom number 2. I'm just going to document that information. And so that's a great question. Thank you so much for that. Hello, Bishop Moore. Thank you so much for tuning in from Brooklyn. Hey, Derek. Happy Marvelous Monday, sir. Okay, Pippi, you say, I love the step-by-step details you offer for inspections as you move through the home. Great information. That's my pleasure. Thank you, and you're absolutely welcome. I hope that it's helpful. I just want to welcome all of my students. I see some of my students are on here. Yes. Sissy, it caught on fire because the tenant did not clean the grease off the stove. And unfortunately, and so here's the thing. If we had not, so I was actually on the property when the fire started. And can you imagine what it could have done? Now, this was an apartment building. Like the whole building could have gone up in smoke just because of the negligence of one tenant. So that's why it's going to be so important. That's right, Lynn. That's why it's going to be so important that when you see these things, you want to document it. Absolutely. So you said, Red Carpet, you had that issue before, over $75,000 in damage. Wow. That's so heartbreaking. And here's the thing. This is not the first time it's happened, and it won't be the last. And so this is why I like to educate my viewers, those of you who are landlords, owners, property managers, as well as tenants, because when we have an educated rental community, sometimes we can minimize a lot of the issues and minimize a lot of the damage. Hello, Anthony. Thank you so much for tuning in. You said, do you supply fire extinguishers? Great question. So here's the thing. It just depends on the type of property, but the answer is yes. So in some of my rental communities, we have a fire extinguisher on every floor in the hallway, like in the common area. Now, in rental communities where we don't have it on every floor, we do provide it in every apartment, because listen, it's just much cheaper to pay the cost for a fire extinguisher versus paying thousands of dollars. And as we just saw, someone had over $75,000 in damage. So yes, we definitely do provide it. So you want to make sure that when you are providing fire extinguishers, you want to have it serviced annually. All right. You want to have it inspected. You want to have it serviced annually, and you want to document when those fire extinguisher inspections are happening, so that way you'll know when to go ahead and schedule your next one. But usually, if you deal with the company, maybe like ACE, for instance, I don't know where your rental property is, Mr. Ricks, but one of the companies that I use, and I use a couple of companies, but one of the companies that I use is ACE Fire Extinguisher. Because I'm on a schedule with them, I already know that around a certain time of the year, let's go ahead and reach out to them if they don't already have my information, to reach out to me to say, hey, Karissa, hey, happy June or happy July. You know, it's that time of the year. It's time for us to come out to inspect your fire extinguishers. I'm going to send letters to all of my tenants letting them know that we are inspecting the fire extinguishers. We are testing the fire alarms because it's going to be important to maintain those features at the rental property. Hey, Pete, thank you so much for tuning in from Baltimore, sir. You say, yep, I've been in some rough neighborhoods. So, Pete, you already understand. Sometimes I walk right past the drug dealers like, hey, fellas, listen, Pete, I've done it quite a bit. And everybody, unfortunately, Pete, I think that we both know that everybody don't have the ability to do that. So if I'm in a community, so let me just say this, that sometimes I've been a little concerned or a little nervous when I saw a group of drug dealers or people out there, but here's the thing. If you respect them, they'll respect you, and so in the few moments or situations where I may have been a little uncomfortable, I will always greet them, just kind of like Pete said, hey, fellas, how y'all doing? I'm going to speak, I'm going to acknowledge, and I'll gently ask. So let's say if they're out there smoking on a property that I'm managing, right? I'll ask them, listen, guys, can y'all take this somewhere else? I have families here. They don't really want to smell that smoke. I respect them, but I'm helping them to understand, like, okay, this is a situation and it's not okay for y'all to hang out here. Y'all can't do drugs here. Now, sometimes people are receptive. Then sometimes they be like, oh, well, I don't know who you are, and woo, woo, woo. And sometimes, it can go a little left, it can go left field. And if that's the case, okay, I apologize. No disrespect, but it's all about respecting others and how you talk to people. I found that makes a difference more than anything. All right. Oh, you're a notary as well, Red Carpet. Great. Thank you so much. Put your information in the chat box if you have like a website or how people can reach you for your services. I want to share that. Okay. And you notarize in DC and Maryland. Okay, great. Please provide your information. Hello, Pastor Bellows. Thank you so much. Good evening. And thank you for tuning in today. All right. Is there a time of window for apartment inspections? Great question. And usually what I'll do is when I'm conducting inspections is during normal business hours. So I'm not going to do an inspection like after 5 or anything like that. I'm going to be respectful of the tenant's time. So I'll send a letter to say that the inspection as well as repairs. In all of my letters, I have a standard letter. It says between 9 and 4. Okay, so I definitely try to keep it within that time frame because I want to respect the fact that people, they have lives and they typically may not want people to come in that late. And if you are a tenant, if you have a landlord that's coming like at 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, just know what the law says in your particular jurisdiction, because unless you're comfortable with people coming into your home that late as a tenant, just kind of know what the law says. You don't have to have people come into your home at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And so that's a great question, Sissy. All right. Okay. Here is Ms. Robinson's information. She is a mobile notary person in DC and Maryland. And her information with this pen notary is a trusted professional mobile notary services to the DC and Maryland communities. Her telephone number to reach her if you're in need of mobile notary services is not free. You will have to pay for it, but the number is on the screen. Her website is on the screen, withthispennotary.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for sharing that information. Okay, Anthony, you said, I'm tuning in from the Virginia Beach. Oh, awesome. I wish I was on the beach, Mr. Ricks. Thank you so much for that. All right. That's right, Ms. Robinson, lady, you said treat people how you want to be treated. Listen, that is the golden rule. Always treat people how you want to be treated. Treat them with respect. Sometimes people may not always receive you right away, but when they realize that you respect them, then sometimes that'll soften their hard heart. That will sometimes soften the hardness that people have, because sometimes people are accustomed to doing things a certain way. But when they see that, you mean business, but you respect them, they usually soften up. Okay, Pippi, I'm coming to your question. Have you had any experience with delinquent tenants taking advantage of the pandemic by not paying their rent? How do you handle a situation like that? Pippi, that is a great question. Thank you so much. And yes, Pippi, I do have tenants who have taken advantage of the pandemic. And a lot of you know that we're still under the national eviction moratorium, right? And because of the COVID-19 pandemic, some tenants have decided to not pay their rent. And I'm not talking about tenants who just don't have it. That's one thing. I'm talking about, and Pippi can relate to this, which is likely why she asked this question. There are tenants who can pay rent, but yet they've taken advantage of the opportunity during this pandemic to not pay rent. And in addition to not paying rent, they have been guilty and negligent for tenant damage in the rental property. So here's how I handle that. Number one, I'm going to address, and they're both important, right? But we need money to maintain the rental property. So we need money to make repairs. We need money to take care of damage, right? So the most important thing is making sure that tenants understand, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, it's the 7th of the month. Then by this time, they already got a letter saying that they're delinquent on their rent, that they owe X amount of dollars. But I'm going to have that conversation. Hey, Miss Tenant, we haven't received your rent payment this month. And I'm going to also share, if there are any resources that I'm aware of, I'm going to share with them. By the way, are you aware that Brooklyn has a program that will help tenants pay their rent? Are you aware that DC has a program that will help tenants pay their rent, whereas you don't have to pay that money? Can we help you to get the money to pay the rent? That way you don't have to come out of your pocket. Then I'll go on and explain that, we have to have the money to make repairs. Sometimes tenants may say, well, you know what? That's just too bad, so sad. It's not my problem. You don't have the money to make repairs, but I need repairs made. Some people are heartless like that, right? Let's just be honest. Some people, that's the mindset. And that's the mind frame of some tenants. And it's okay. If that's who they are, okay. Who am I to say that they're wrong? No worries. So I'll just go ahead. I'll document that I had a conversation with the tenant regarding the delinquent rent, the repairs that need to be made. If it's intentional damage, I'm going to document it, right? I said that's the one thing that you want to do. You want to document it. If you can get pictures, you can get a video of it, but definitely with pictures. So if the tenant does not receive you, is disrespectful, don't care that they're not paying you, they laugh in your face, and guess what? It happens all the time. Tenants do laugh in some landlord's face. To say, okay, I'm not paying the rent, and you still got to make the pay. So what? Unfortunately, it happens, right? Don't make you feel good, does it? No, it doesn't make you feel good at all. So you document it, you take the pictures, suck it up. We treating it like a business, so we're not wearing our emotions on our sleeve. We're not going to get our panties or our drawers up in a bunch because tenants are disrespecting us. We're going to handle it like a business. And I know that's a little harsh, but I want people to understand that it is a business. All right. And so don't allow people to get you out of your character. All right. We are treating it like a business. And so we're going to follow up and handle it like it's a business. And in some jurisdictions, we can take tenants to court for violating their lease. We can't take them to court for not paying their rent. But in some jurisdictions, we are able to take tenants to court when they are violating the lease. We can document it. We'll follow up in writing. We'll follow up not just in writing, but Pippi, when I send my tenant a letter, I'm going to attach the pictures. I'm going to attach a copy of the invoice. And I'm explaining all of that in my letter. Okay. On today's date, we conducted an inspection and we found that there were holes in the walls. There was an iron stain in the floor that went to the plywood. I'm going to identify all of the issues. I'm going to have a picture of every issue attached to that letter, and every invoice or every estimate. I'm going to attach it to that letter. I'm going to send it to the tenant. And if the tenant still does not respond, let me just back up. Also in your letter, please include landlords. Please hear me on this. Please always give the tenant a time frame to contact you to take care of the cost of the repairs or to set up a repayment agreement. My letters typically state 30 days. I'm giving the tenant, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, please contact me within 30 days to make a payment or to discuss payment arrangements for the cost of the repair. Okay, because here's why that's important. Because when I take this tenant to court, the judge can see my attempts to work this out with the tenant. Like, Your Honor, I sincerely tried to work this out with the tenant. I sent the tenant a letter. I spoke to the tenant on such and such date. And I'm so thorough. I'm so detailed. I keep documentation on everything. I have a file for every tenant. Okay. So you just send a tenant a letter, Pippi. And if that doesn't work, unfortunately, worst case scenario or best case scenario, take the tenant to court for a violation of the lease. And that's how I handle the situation. Okay, Pete, you said they don't want the attention. If they know you're working in the neighborhood, they won't approach. And sometimes, Pete, that's usually what happens. Okay, Pippi, you are a notary in Brooklyn. Please put your information in the box in the comment section so that I can share it with others who are also tuned in New York. Okay, thank you so much. There's the information for Ms. Anderson. She's also a notary in DC and Maryland. Her information is on the screen. Please reach out to her if you are in need in mobile notary services. She will come to you as well. Okay, Pippi, this is your information. So Pippi Span is a mobile notary in Brooklyn, New York. Thank you so much for that. Hey, V, thank you so much for tuning in. Do you have a list of reliable, handy repairmen? Yes, I do, V. In which jurisdiction? Let me know which area are you in need of that information. So I'm going to do another segment. So V, you're tuned in from YouTube. I think I'm going to send an email out, community information, just sharing a list of reliable repair people. All right, so I have a list of people that I work with. You can also check with, I think is it Angie's List? I haven't used that in years, but Angie's List, you can also check that out. That is a site. I'm not sure if it's paid or free. I don't remember, but I'll check it out for you, V, where you can go online and you can look for repair people. But if it's in the DC metropolitan area, V, please email me and I'll send you the list of people that I use and they will gladly help you out. I will not personally recommend poor quality, someone that won't provide quality service. I'm not a supporter of that. Okay, please explain the moratorium for those who may not be clear. Thank you so much for that, Pippi. So with the eviction moratorium, that means that there are laws in place due to COVID, right? COVID-19 hit us and it rocked this nation. It rocked this world, like countries around the world have been impacted. But specifically in the United States, the eviction moratorium is in place to protect tenants. And it's important for people to understand that with the CDC national eviction moratorium, that tenants cannot legally be evicted for not paying their rent. Okay, so tenants cannot be evicted during the eviction moratorium. So the eviction moratorium is in place. The CDC's moratorium is in place until the end of June. Now, just depending on state or city laws, the eviction moratorium may extend beyond June the 30th. So check with your city, make sure that you know that city's date, because what applies in New York doesn't apply in DC, doesn't apply in Virginia Beach, doesn't apply in South Carolina. So the laws are going to be different, right? So, but the eviction moratorium is in place. Here's why people have, especially landlords, have a complaint about this eviction moratorium, because the CDC is not HUD, right? It's not Housing and Urban Development. That's federal, right? So a lot of landlords have complained that the CDC doesn't have jurisdiction to say that tenants can't be evicted for paying their rent. So I do agree and understand that. I'm also an advocate. Okay, I serve on a couple of boards and I frequently meet with council members, have meetings with council members to try to get things changed pertaining to the eviction moratorium. So I get it. But here's the thing, at the end of the day, it is a health pandemic. So evicting tenants at this time could possibly put people in jeopardy of possibly contracting COVID-19. They're trying to continue to cause the numbers to come down. So they don't want to evict tenants during the moratorium because there's a fear that if tenants are evicted, they'll become homeless and possibly exposed to getting COVID-19 when they're trying to get rid of it. Okay. So, but as long as the eviction moratorium is in place, landlords cannot legally evict tenants for not paying rent unless, let me just say, unless in that particular jurisdiction, the city or the state laws permit or allow a landlord to do so. Now, let me just say, An eviction means that this landlord and the tenant, they've gone to court and the judge has granted permission for that owner to evict them. Now, if the owner just goes in, and I've had some people have done it now. If you know you've done it, don't say me. Don't say I've done it, Karissa. I don't want to know that public information. Okay, chat with me offline. But there have been people who have they've landlords and owners, they've changed the locks. They have illegally evicted tenants. You cannot do that. All right. And so if you have done that, please know that tenants can sue you for illegal eviction. So if you or someone that you know has been guilty of that, just keep your fingers crossed. Hope and pray that that tenant has not watched my landlord and tenant coaching, my landlord and tenant live that I do every Monday. Just hope and pray that they have not watched me and they know their rights and responsibilities, because they can sue owners. Okay. And there are federal fines that will be imposed upon landlords who have illegally evicted tenants during the eviction moratorium. So I hope that answers the question and explains it a little bit more. And if not, Pippi, let me know. I'll break it down a little bit more in detail. I'm just trying to get through more of the questions. So V, you said to be politically correct, a list for repair contractors. Okay, absolutely. So yeah, so V, if you could email me, I'll send you the list of quality contractors that I personally recommend in the DMV area. They are licensed, they are professional. They're not. I don't believe in sending somebody that's not professional, that's just trying to figure stuff out or will overcharge you. I don't believe in doing that. Okay, so email me and I will send you that list. Thank you for that, V. All right, Pete, documentation beats conversation. Absolutely, Pete. That's why I love you. You the man. Documentation beats conversation any day. Remember, I said it's not what you know, it's what you can prove, right? And so when you have it documented, no conversation. Listen, people can say anything. Listen, I can tell you that my logo is not really red. My logo is zebra print with polka dot stripes, right? But when you actually see it, when it's documented, you can see the picture like, no, Karissa, it's really red. Now, if you've never seen my logo, I can tell you, well, no, my logo is not red. It's yellow and it got a little purple house at the bottom. But when it's documented, nothing can change documentation. So documentation beats conversation every time. Absolutely. Hey, Lauren, happy Monday, beautiful. All right, Lauren, your question is, have you seen where landlords pay for periodic home cleaning for tenants? I have. I definitely have. And so okay, so let me respond a couple of ways. So Lauren, in situations where, let's say you have a market tenant, right? Meaning that it's not a HUD subsidized. Maybe it's a Section 8 tenant or market tenant. And if there's some sort of housekeeping issue, if the tenant's nastiness creates a hazard that could possibly endanger not just the tenant, but other tenants in the building, then sometimes, yeah, I'll go ahead and pay for the repairs. I'm sorry, for the cleaning. I have done that. I've done it. I have paid for tenants' homes to be cleaned. And sometimes it's important to do it if it's a health issue, if it's going to be a situation where, let's say, I'm going to use DC because DC is pro tenant. Okay, DC is one of the strictest areas. DC is not the only area that's pro tenant, but DC is one of the strictest areas, meaning that the laws are strongly in favor for the tenant and not for the landlord, right? So, Lauren, I have had tenants who were so nasty, right? Tenant didn't clean, had spider webs in the corner. True story, I walked into a tenant's apartment. I don't think she ever opened the windows or the blinds, but anyway, the apartment was so nasty that she had spider webs, and she must have had a party or something. And you know, like the little birthday streamers that you stream and you see hanging down. Well, it was a black piece of the streamer that was stuck in the spider web. I thought it was a bat. It was so big. I was terrified. That just goes to show how nasty the house was. And that was just a starting point. Okay. And so every room was nasty. The carpet was nasty. Like, you can feel as you walk throughout that apartment, as you're walking on the carpet, Lauren, You can feel the nastiness from the carpet under your feet, like your shoes just kind of stick to the carpet. Like it felt like just nastiness. Okay. I have paid for tenants' homes to be clean. I have paid for the carpet to be replaced. I've paid for the tub to be clean, the refrigerator, the stove to be clean. Here's the thing, because in jurisdictions such as Washington, D.C., and some other surrounding communities, sometimes, Lauren, tenants will contact local authority, maybe DCRA or some sort of housing community development or inspection department, to say, hey, my landlord is not making repairs, and I told them that I have mice and all these issues, and they never came out to do anything. Well, the inspection department for the agency, they are responsible for making sure that they come out to inspect. Now, they may come out in person or they may do a virtual inspection because of COVID. Either way, they are going to respond when tenants complain. All right. Now, is it my fault that the tenant is nasty, that her carpet looks like, although she may have only lived there for 3 years, like the carpet looks like she lived there for 100 years, and she maybe had a herd of elephants that just came and just pooped all over the carpet and did whatever they wanted to do? Is it my fault that they never cleaned the stove and the stove is nasty? They got food all over the place, all over the counter and all over the floor. Is it my fault that the place reeks like it's just nasty? Is it my fault that the tenants got roaches all over the place because they never clean up? They just never even flush the toilet, right? It just smells like hot mess on a hot sunny day in Barbados. Like, is it my fault? But when the inspector come and they see evidence of roaches or mice, and the tenant complains that my landlord never made repairs, and that's why the situation is so bad. It is that inspector's job to cite what they see. Now, they're definitely going to cite the landlord if they see these issues. So if you get a fine because you haven't made repairs because a tenant damaged the place or haven't cleaned up, go ahead, pay the costs for the repairs. Go ahead and pay to clean it up. Just try to force a smile on your face, all right? Although you may want to not smile, although you may be in a situation where you don't want to say nice words, you might just want to cuss the tenant out or whatever that causes you to feel, because sometimes being put in those type of situations will bring about emotions, right? You're not always going to be professional. And as professional, as nice as I am, sometimes I have those moments where tenants will intentionally do things to create a situation for no reason. It just doesn't make sense. Like, I'm one of the best landlords and housing providers. Like, if you work with me, I'm gonna work with you. But Lauren, that's not everybody's situation. So, but yes, I have paid for that. And if me taking care of those repairs and cleaning that tenant's home is going to save me or eliminate the possibility of me paying fines by the city, okay, whether it's my rental property or the property that I manage for my clients, I would rather take care of those repairs. I would rather pay that cost, but I'm definitely going to document, Lauren, and I'm definitely going to pass that cost on to the tenant. I'll go ahead, listen, I'm going to contact the authority to say, hey, listen, I made the repairs. Here's a copy of the receipt. Here's a copy of the paid invoice. I've cleaned the tenant property to make sure that I'm not fined, right? But I'm going to pass that on to the tenant. So, but now in other jurisdictions, let's say, because I am also a certified occupancy specialist. So that means I work in HUD communities as well, right? So that means the housing subsidy is specifically tied, is project-based, meaning that tenants get housing assistance. HUD pays their rent. So the tenant may have a portion and HUD will pay us the difference. In those communities, I can't charge a tenant any money at all. I have to take care of the costs. I can't charge the tenant for that. I can't pass that bill on to the tenant. Now, if it's something where the tenant is responsible for, Lauren, here's what you could do is if the tenant, let's say the tenant is asking, because sometimes tenants will ask every 5 years, can you replace my carpet? Can you paint my property? Is it a requirement? Is it in the lease? Is it a must that I do that? See, these are the type of conversations that I have with the tenant. Now, if they are good tenants and if it's in the budget, I'll go ahead and say, okay, well, let's look at doing this. But if it's a nasty tenant and I just don't understand why this tenant is intentionally doing stuff, I'm gonna let the tenant know, well, you do have permission to pay for having your carpet shampooed. You do have permission to pay my professional contractors to paint your rental home. So you can definitely have that conversation. Okay, so let's go on to my next question or comment. Give me 1 second. Okay, V, you said yes to DC, Maryland area. I will email you. Thank you for all the information. Absolutely, that's what I'm here for. It is my pleasure. Pippi, your question, what help resources is there for the landlords who is delinquent on their mortgage due to tenant negligence? There are some agencies that do, okay, let me just say this. There are some agencies that are stepping up to make sure that rent is paid for tenants, okay? So just depending on the jurisdiction, I would look up in the jurisdiction that the rental property is in, if there are resources available for landlords, because in some places, there are agencies, there are resources available that landlords and tenants can tap into for this money. That's number one. Secondly, I would say check with the mortgage company to see if there is any assistance that they are able to offer. Just do maybe Pippi, just, or whoever is in need of this information, maybe do a Google search for mortgage assistance in the particular jurisdiction that the rental property is in. Because I realize that some owners are not having any good luck. They're not having success with getting financial assistance, but there is money available. So I'm hoping that this information will help you to understand that sometimes it's just a matter of just going a little bit deeper. Do a Google search, maybe contact city council, wherever that rental property is, and let them know, listen, I'm a landlord. I have to pay the mortgage on my property, or by the time this eviction moratorium is up, I'm going to be out of my home. And so they definitely don't want to see owners lose their rental property. Okay, so don't think that landlords, don't think that you don't have any help, although all the help is primarily for tenants, but just reaching out, just going above and beyond to search out what is available. But that's a great question, Pippi. Thank you for that. Okay. Excuse me, you said I had to do that with the Section 8 to prevent a grease fire. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes you have to go above and beyond for that information. Okay, thank you, lady. Here is the website for HUD website, hud.gov/program. Please check them out, okay? Please go online. If you are a landlord, please check out this website that is on the screen, okay? Do some research, get the information, get the help that you need for you, because it is a business, okay? So sometimes we got to go above and beyond and make sure that we are protecting ourselves and our business, okay? So this information is for you, Pippi. That information that was on the screen. Hey, Val, happy Monday, beautiful. I know, yuck, right? Okay, Pete, you said what? You have moments like that? Yes, I do. I do have moments like that. Pete, I'm just as human as everybody else. Hello, Michelle. Happy Monday, beautiful. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so I've only gotten through the first point. All right, so let me go to the second point. And that's this. You can sue in court for an eviction. So if you have a tenant who is violating the lease, they are intentionally damaging it, you have already documented, you've had a conversation with the tenant, you've sent them letters, you've sent them a copy of the invoice, you've sent them the pictures, and they still are not willing to work with you, your only option at this point, don't take it personal. Don't wear your feelings or your emotions on your sleeve. Take the tenant to court. Make sure that you have an understanding. Number one, you understand what the law says, okay? If you are required to send your tenant a 30-day notice in Spanish and in English, you want to know what you are supposed to do. Here is why that's important. It would be a sad day. You go through all of that. You get a date in court. You go before the judge, and the judge dismiss the case, kicks the case out of court because you did something wrong. So make sure that you understand the laws. Make sure you dot every I and you cross every T. Please make sure that you are doing that. Now, here's the thing. If you know that you're not maybe like the most knowledgeable with the laws, I would recommend that you consider getting yourself a good landlord and tenant attorney that can best represent you. Okay? Please do that. Get a good landlord and tenant attorney if you're not able to do it, to take your tenant to court. Now, third and finally on this point, please understand that with this eviction moratorium in place, a lot of landlords are going to be caught off guard. Landlords that don't watch me, landlords who don't know the law, they're going to make this mistake. You should have, in many, many jurisdictions now, they are making it a requirement. You must have a renter's license, a business license in order to get an eviction. Now, is it fair? Let's say I know that I have some landlords watching. They have not received money in over a year from some of their tenants. I get it. It's heartbreaking. I get it. I've had tenants that have given me gray hair since the eviction moratorium. I've never had this much gray. Now I got all this gray, right? So, but is it fair that landlords have to now jump through all these extra hoops to get a renter's license or a business license before they can even take a tenant to court that hasn't paid rent in over a year? Is it fair? Here's what I will say. If you have gotten away with it this far, kudos to you. But please get your business in order. If you do not have a renter's license, if you do not have a renter's license, a business license for your rental property, now is the time to get your business in order. You want to run it like a business. So you should already have those documents. But if you don't, please now take the time to do that. Because if you have to go to court, just depending on the jurisdiction, and if you don't have it in place, you won't get an eviction. The judge is going to say, too bad, so sad. You get the goose egg, case dismissed. Then you have to start the process all over again. That could be a nightmare. So please don't be that person. Don't put yourself in that situation. And then I'll have to come and do another segment and share with the people how one of my landlords who watch me did not get a business license, a renter's license, and the case got kicked out of court. That would be embarrassing. Okay. So please listen to the advice that I am sharing today. All right. So Pippi said thank you. Great. All right. So let me go to my third point for the evening. Now, let's say you have gone to court, right? The eviction moratorium is over or not. The judge has granted you permission to do the eviction, right? And let's say that there is an extensive amount of damage that this tenant has done in a rental property. Landlords can take it out of the security deposit when the tenant moves out. Okay. So you don't take it from the security deposit if the tenant is still living in the rental property. Okay. You can't do that. That's not permissible. Okay. That is a prohibited practice. And here's why you don't want to do that in the first place. All right. So let's just say there is a laundry list of repairs, right? That this tenant has created so much damage and the amount is just piling up, right? It's just piling up to the roof. Okay. I am not going to tell my tenant, oh, don't worry about paying me now. I'll just take it out of your security deposit. Here's why. Because when the tenant finally moves out, the amount of the damage or the repairs that I have to pay for, the replacements that may be needed, the cleaning that, I might have to pay out of pocket for, it may exceed what I have in the bank for the security deposit. So let's just say the tenant has given me a security deposit of, let's say $1,500. Tenant has been in place for forever, right? And they have like $234 in interest on top of what they gave me. So legally, the tenant is responsible. Well, the landlord is responsible for returning that security deposit. That means the deposit plus the interest. Okay. So let's just say we're up to $1,700. Okay. $1,700 in the security deposit that is sitting in the bank. Okay. When this tenant moves out, there is $3,000 worth of damage that I have to pay for. So that little $1,700 is not going to cover that. So I would never, ever tell a tenant, oh, don't worry about paying me. I'll just take it out of your security deposit. You don't know how much is going to be left over when the tenant moves out. So please never do that. But if you get an eviction, and let's say the tenant does move out, you can definitely deduct that from the security deposit. Okay. All right. And here's a fourth point. I just want to share this, that once you deduct it from the security deposit, and let me just go back to this, because from the security deposit, you should also send the tenant a letter. And I had a question in my last live. Someone asked me, well, Karissa, what do I do if I don't know where the tenant moved to? Okay. And sometimes it happens. Sometimes people will move on. You don't know how to reach them. You don't know how to contact them. What you want to do is you still want to do a certified letter with the check. Okay. So dear tenant, here is the security deposit that I owe you. If I don't have a forwarding address, I'm going to mail it to certified mail with return receipt. I'm going to mail it to the last known address. And here's the thing. The last known address was my rental property. Okay. But I'm still going to do certified mail. I'm going to mail it to that last known address. Here's why I'm going to do that. Number one, I'm going to do certified return receipt, because if anything ever happens, I have the documentation from the post office. Your Honor, I tried to mail the security deposit payment. I had nowhere to mail it to. Okay. But secondly, sometimes tenants will forward their mail. They will do a change of address and do a forward mail. So if you mail it to the last known address and they have a forward on it, then the post office will forward that payment to wherever it needs to go. But if that's not the case, if that's not the scenario, you mail it, it's no forwarding address attached to it from the post office, and it comes back to you, then you've tried to return it and the tenant hasn't provided you with that information. It's nothing that you can do. It's not the end of the world. Okay. It happens all the time. Okay. Fourth and finally, if all of that, right, all of that happens, let's say you have a situation where the damage is so extensive. We had a landlord on this live today, and she shared how she had to pay over $75,000, okay, because of damage that a tenant was responsible for. You can definitely take the tenant to small claims or civil court, all right? Now, again, you want to have your documentation. You want to have all your invoices. At this point, you shouldn't have estimates. You should have invoices plus pictures. And when you go to court, you can ask the court, you can put in a disclaimer that you are asking for proof of their assets, meaning any bank accounts, right? If they have a checking account, a savings account, whatever their assets are, you can request that information to be shared through the court. You can request that the tenant provides information for their employer to do wage withholding. I have had to sue people and it came out of their paycheck. I didn't feel sorry for them. They knew they owed the money, right? So too bad, so sad. It's a business, right? So you are entitled to ask for that money. All right, so let me go to more of my questions here. Lynn, in Maryland, can you apply for your license online? You should be able to, Lynn. Definitely check that. I believe you can, definitely in PG. But let me double check that for you, Lynn. But yes, you should be able to apply online. I think that now, if it's in PG, I don't believe that they make it a requirement that you come in. So you should be able to go online to apply for your license, Lynn. Great question. Do you have a list of property lawyers for DC? I absolutely do. Me and my life forever. Please email me. If you got an email to watch this live, email me that and I will send it over to you, please. I want to make sure that I get you that information. So I did go a lot longer than I usually do. And I thank you all for all of your comments and all of your questions. This is what I do each and every Monday at 7:30 p.m. It costs people absolutely nothing to show up to get this free information. And I promise that if we just kind of share information, stick together, kind of help each other out, it will be a whole lot better for us all. And I shared a lot of information today for landlords. Let me share some information for tenants, because y'all know I love my tenants. Okay. I told y'all I have the best tenants. And I know that some of my tenants are watching and will watch the replay. So tenants, if you are in rental property and you know that you are, you're a good tenant, and maybe you have a landlord that's not making repairs, just still listen to some of the advice that I shared today. Have a conversation with the landlord. Send your landlord a text or email. You can send your landlords pictures of whatever the issues are. And if the situation still continues to go on and the landlord doesn't make repairs, you do have a right to contact an inspection agency, Department of Housing and Community Development, or whatever inspection department is in your jurisdiction where you live at. You are entitled to ask for those things. But let me just say this, for those other category of tenants, if you know that you're responsible for the damage, you're responsible for the repairs, just kind of have a heart, just be honest, don't create a situation for landlords, because landlords are people too, right? They got bills that they have to pay, and it costs money. It's not cheap, to make repairs. Okay. So just kind of work with your landlord. And this is why I share this information, to bring the rental community together, because I promise you that it works better when we work together. And another thing that I want tenants to understand is this: just because you contact the inspections department doesn't mean that you're not supposed to pay your rent. Okay. If there are issues going on in the rental property, it is the court's determination for you to not pay rent. So don't withhold your rent payment because something is going on in a rental property and you haven't gone to court. If you are going to do that as a tenant, please make sure that you put your money in escrow. Okay. I promise you that you can catch more bees with honey than you can with vinegar. So don't be mean, don't be nasty, because owners, they have to pay bills for their rental property. And, it would just be a really bad situation where, as a tenant, you don't pay your rent money, and then this landlord or this owner lose their rental property because you haven't paid. That's not good. That's shysty. Don't be shysty, y'all. Be nice. Okay. Let's be nice. Okay. Let's work together. All right. Because landlords can evict, and I'm encouraging landlords to work with you. So now I'm encouraging tenants, work with your landlords. Okay. And if you have any questions, go ahead and inbox me. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a judge. I can't put anybody out. I can't make a landlord do the right thing, and I can't make tenants do the right thing, but I can definitely share information to encourage togetherness. Okay. All right. So thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for consistently joining me each and every Monday. And this, again, guys, this is what I do each and every Monday right here at 7:30 p.m. If you have any comments, any questions, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. I will definitely get you information that you need if you email me. Let me give you my email address. Let me see if I have it prepared for you all. And then, guys, don't forget, if you are on the YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube page. That's my information so that you can find me online, my Facebook and my YouTube channel. All right. So my email address is, Kim, are you still on? Miss Parker, Kimberly Parker, are you still on? Okay, so I'm not sure. All right, I'll follow up with Kim. So if you have information, so for instance, if you want to email me, my email address is first name, last name, carissaspan@gmail.com. If you're asking for information you want me to send to you, please email me. My email address is carissaspan.com. Okay. carissaspan@gmail.com. I do apologize about that. So guys, listen, my time is up and I thank you for yours. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you will join me next week right here at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to say bye for now.